Hi, my name is Pablo Caif, and I work at iFlix, and this presentation is basically about my experience with CoreNFC and the stuff that I've been doing with it. So let's get started. So just going to quickly talk about NFC. So NFC stands for Near Field Communication. And there are two types. You got the active NFC devices and the passive NFC devices. And I actually find very interesting the passive NFC devices because they behave in a similar way, or similar to what you see with the inductive charging, the wireless charging, in a way that you get the reader close to the tag, say if you have a tag, and the magnetic field of the reader induces an electric current on the NFC chip, and it powers it on, and then it can start talking to the reader. So I find that very interesting. They typically are used to store small amount of information. There might be some special cases where they might store a bit more information, but most of the cases is about 8Ks, and they're used quite a lot to initiate peer-to-peer communication. So that means that if you want to pair Bluetooth or pair, for example, to connect to a Wi-Fi, NFC will just give you the necessary information to connect to that Bluetooth. For example, the Bluetooth ID or the address. And then you can continue with the Bluetooth pairing, knowing that bit of information. If we're talking about Wi-Fi, it might give you the SID and the password, so you can go and connect. They're also really good to provide quick, easy ways of bits of information. So, for example, if you have inventory and you want to categorize and you want to know what it is, or for example, in museums, you might have tags with information about some specific piece of art, so you can get close and read the information, or URLs and things like that. And of course, they use also for contactless payment in its secure way. So, for example, Apple Pay and even the actual, all the credit cards that we have here in Australia, they got this very same NFC chip that gets powered by this magnetic field. So last year, Apple finally opened up CoreNFC, which became available on iOS 11 for iPhone 7 and upwards. Still, we got the Apple Watch, iPhone 6, 6S, and the Plus versions, but it's not supported there. So if you want to use it there, you need to get an iPhone 7 and upwards. And the type of NFC reading that is supported first is read-only, and also it supports the NDEF format. And the way it works is they're trying to keep the security there, so the app itself doesn't have anything to do, it hasn't anything to do with the hardware that reads the NFC, and neither with the lower levels that read all these bytes from the NFC chip. So all that happens outside the sandbox, and it's handled by iOS. And then you get the callback through a delegate with the message, the NFC message that were read. Which means that all the low-level things, and especially the security involved in terms of being able to tamper with credit cards and things like that, that's all not visible. Kind of like Touch ID, which that lives behind the security enclave. This year, with iOS 12, they added support for background reading, which means you just get your device, and if there is any NFC tag, you can just get it close without running your app, and it will run your app, and you will get through an NS user activity the NFC tag message. I'm going to just touch a little bit more later about that. And since it's very limited, the API is actually quite small and simple to use. So first, I'm going to tell you how the NFC messages are composed. This is the NDEF message itself. So this is what we actually have access through CoreNFC. So we got the message, which might have multiple records. And each record has a header and a payload. And the header itself has identifiers, a length, which is for the payload, so you know how long is the payload, and a type, which is the name type. And this can be, for example, if it's URI or if it is Bluetooth pairing, like media. And encoded into the payload, there is also the actual MIME type. So, for example, if we are, let's say, if we have a URL in there, that URL might be, I don't know, maybe an SMS contact or something like that. That MIME type is encoded in the payload. But from CoreNFC, what you get to see is an abstracted version. So you get to see that MIME type, which is called type. You get to see the name type and also the payload itself. And both the type and the payload are visible as data. And when you want to do this background reading, what you need to have in this message is the first record needs to be an URI, which with the actual associated domain of your app that needs to be defined in your Xcode. That is what it will cause iOS to run your app, and in the app delegate, you will get that callback with the NS user activity and passing the message itself. And then you can keep going through the records and read them. So when you want to use it, it's actually fairly straightforward. So you need to add the NFC tag reading capability. And you know, Xcode being Xcode, sometimes might happen that even you add the capability in the capabilities file, that key come Apple Developer NFC Reader Session formats. It's not quite right, so it's not maybe it's not there. It happened to me a couple of times. So it's just not going to work. So you need to go there, make sure that it's actually being added. I think it was fixed in Xcode 10, but I'm not sure. Same thing with the CoreNFC framework. It happened to me a couple of times that it wasn't added automatically, so of course, make sure it gets added. And you need to provide a description of why do you need to use NFC. Same way you do with a camera. That needs to go in the plist, info plist. And when you want to use it, of course, we need to import CoreNFC. And there is this NFC NDEF reader session, which is this object that it will allow you to trigger the readings. So it's just very straightforward. You can provide small bits of configuration, instantiate that, then you run begin session, and then you will get this system dialog popping up and telling you, get close to the NFC tag. And then once the reading is completed, you get back the callback coming from the NFC, the CoreNFC, through a delegate method called reader session did detect NDEF messages. So you need to also adopt that protocol. How does it look in code? So as I was saying before, it's not supported on every device, even if for example, the iPhone 6 has NFC reader. In my CoreNFC, it's not supported, so we need to check first that it's supported. Then we instantiate this reader session, and we pass the delegate. In my case, the delegate is the same class. Then we pass the queue, where it's going to hand the results back, where it's going to do the call to the delegate, which if you pass nil, it will just use its own serial queue. So if you're doing anything with the UI or anything like that, make sure you go into the main thread. This invalidate after first read is basically to, if you're, for example, going through inventory and you need to do multiple readings, it will just keep this reading up, and it will keep doing the callback to read message until you do invalidate session. Typically, you might do just one read. And then, of course, you need to provide a message saying, you know, some descriptive message that you're going to see on that dialog. And then when you call begin, it's going to start reading. So the way of how you get to see the messages is through this delegate call, where you can get the session and the message. The messages as an array. You might want to go through the messages, and then you might want to check or be interested in a specific type name format. In my case, I'm just interested in the media. And then, as I was saying, you got this type, which comes as data, so you need to turn into string, and the payload itself might contain the data that you're interested in. So, for example, for Bluetooth pairing, I think it's the OOB, out-of-band protocol. You get a payload, and if you go to the NFC forum, you can get to see how all the information is contained there, for example, the Bluetooth device and everything like that. So, when Apple last year announced that, I got pretty excited because I got interested in a specific use case, which was I really like. I enjoy doing iOS development a lot, but I also like photography. So I got this mirrorless camera, which is like a sort of a small version of an SLR. There's no mirror, but and it takes quite good pictures. And it allows me to send the pictures to my phone through Wi-Fi. And it has an NFC tag. I don't think it's visible from here. But if you're using an Android device, you can do the NFC pairing and connect to the camera's Wi-Fi. On iOS, it's pretty annoying because you actually need to find the picture you want to send to your phone on the camera. Then you need to go to settings. You need to go to the Wi-Fi, find the Wi-Fi, where sometimes it doesn't show immediately. Then you need to connect to the Wi-Fi, and then close settings, go to the camera's app, and wait until it starts downloading the pictures. So I'm thinking, maybe there is something that I can use to extract this information, the Wi-Fi seed and the password, and I can connect to the camera. So that was the plan. Read the NFC NDEF messages, find the Wi-Fi details, and somehow connect to it. Fortunately, there was actually something else released on last year with iOS 11, which came together with the network extensions. Network extensions is a pretty interesting framework which it's been there for a while, and allows you to do a whole bunch of nice stuff, such as having your own proxy. You can act as a proxy, or all these VPN apps. They use network extensions because you can have your own VPN or implement content filters and things like that. And you can actually do, if you have a proprietary or a custom configuration to connect to a specific Wi-Fi, you can use I think it's the hotspot configuration helper or something like that to connect to this point. But the problem with all this stuff is that you actually need to request to Apple the entitlement, and you need to justify why do you need to use that. So it's not as straightforward. But these last two over there are a complete different entitlement. So you can now add a Wi-Fi configuration or remove it and connect to one that you have previously added. And it sits on a complete different capability. So you just enable that. You don't care about the network extensions. And, it's quite easy. So I started tinkering with that and see what I could do. So if you want to set up that, as I was saying before, just need to add the hotspot configuration capability. Make sure that the network extensions framework has been added. Then if you want to use it, we need to import a framework. we need to get an instance of this hotspot configuration manager, which is a singleton that it will give us the ability of adding these configurations. And then with the Wi-Fi seed that I extracted from the NFC tag and the password, I can create a configuration, a hotspot configuration, and pass it on to this configuration manager. And it allows you to pass a completion block. So it will tell you, yeah, I was able to add the configuration, or no, fail. And of course, you need to make sure you're handling the errors. So this is how it looks in code. Different to the NFC we just saw, this is available in all the devices. So we need to make sure that we're not running on the simulator because it doesn't work in the simulator. So we get this hotspot configuration manager, as I was saying. We create the configuration with the seed and the password. And then when we call this apply, what it will do is it will add the configuration, and immediately after adding the configuration, it will try to connect to the Wi-Fi. And you will get like a message saying, do you want to connect to this Wi-Fi, yes or no? However, if there was an error adding the configuration, you get this error, so you might do something, I want to do something on like handle different errors, or if it's succeeded, you might want to do something else. In my case, what I did is I opened the Sony app. So the Sony app carries on and keeps and goes and downloads the picture. So showed you the demo. Okay, so this is the camera. So for example, if I go and take a picture of this plant, you can see there the picture, right? And of course, got no other, it's not yet in my phone. So I started working on this app. That's something I haven't released yet, but for now I'm just using the Sony's camera app. So when I start the NFC reading, it will just present that. That's the panel that I was telling you. If I get it close to the NFC chip, you get to see that, message, do you want to join to the camera's Wi-Fi? And then, if the demo goes, oh no. Okay, we might want to try it again. Oh no, it connected. So that's one of the problems I'm going to tell you later. So I managed to connect to the Wi-Fi, downloaded the picture. And if I go now to my pictures, photo should be there. Yep. So, as you just saw, not everything is all roses. So there are a few pain points that I ran into as I was working with this, a few bumps in the road. The first thing is, on iOS 12, the CoreNFC framework was removed in the devices that don't support CoreNFC. So before that, on iOS 11, it was present on all the installed images. So even on an iPad and stuff like that, when you were linking that framework, it was just getting the framework, or it was just returning, no, CoreNFC is not available. But on iOS 12, it got removed. So I found myself in the situation of my app crashing all the time without knowing what the hell was going on. Then I started tinkering on the installed images of iOS, and I found that they were gone. So fortunately, you can actually add as optional a framework. So now on iOS 12, when you add in the framework, make sure you add in as optional, so your app doesn't crash. NFC NDEF is read-only. It'd be good to have it write, to be able to write on tags. I think it'd be really cool, but it's not possible yet. Hopefully, sometime in the future. With the hotspot configuration, a problem that you have is, as you saw there, it's not possible to know if the connection was successful or not. Your app doesn't get any notification or anything like that. You just get a callback when the configuration was added, which means you don't really know if it was able to connect to the Wi-Fi. So you're at the mercy that that happened. Of course, you can do something like detect the Wi-Fi that you're connected to, but it adds like an extra step. It'd be nice to being able to know, yeah, you connected. In my case, I'm not checking for that, but I'm planning to add that stuff. Also, if the user went, for example, with the camera, added manually the Wi-Fi details into the settings on their phone, you're going to get an error when you try to connect to that. It would be really good if you could just connect. If it already exists, you're trying to connect that to a Wi-Fi that is already there, why not to just connect? But now you get an error saying you can't connect to that because it has been already added. And you can remove it, of course, because you're just an app running on a sandbox. So whoever is using this needs to go to settings, remove it, and then your app will be able to add it. And also that dialog that you saw saying, do you want to connect to this Wi-Fi? It will happen every time. Every time you add the configuration, you will see that. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
Hold on, let me crack the mic. Was it you last? Yeah. I want to hear your question. Thank you. I'm wondering, do you know if there's any way to have some sort of a device that acts as an NFC tag for sort of testing purposes or simulation purposes? Or maybe there is a simple way to, I don't know, somehow make these NFC tags so I can, I don't know, make 5 and put them across my room or something and then have some app that uses those.
Something that I started experimenting with was the Bose QC35 headphones. They have an NFC tag, so you can wait to do the Bluetooth pairing. So I was playing with that and reading and going through all the details of the record. If not, you need some device that is able to write. So for example, I don't know, maybe an Android device can be used to write the NFC tag.
That actually sounds like an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Why not? Thank you.
You can get RFID, you can talk to a Raspberry Pi as well and put that way.
That's a good one.
Do you know if there's any standards for the actual message bodies? Like, there must be a ton of cameras that have Wi-Fi hotspot capabilities. Do they all use the same standards for the message formats, or would that be a proprietary thing?
So there is a standard for the Wi-Fi pairing. However, the Sony camera doesn't follow that standard. So I had to try to hack whatever they were sending on that message and try to find the Wi-Fi details.
Hi, Pablo. Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. Just had a quick question. What about the cards like Mikey cards or something? I mean, why can't you read them? They're not in standard NDEF. Are they encoded, or how do you read them, basically?
I would imagine that they don't follow the NDEF format, and they probably are secure. So with CoreNFC, it's not possible to read them.
But what happens with the cards like your, Apple Pay or Woolworths, where you've got on the wallet and so on?
You don't. Basically, it's like if you weren't reading anything at all. You get it close to it, and nothing happens. So you only get that callback in the delegate when it's able to read an NDEF message.
Okay. No, thank you.
My question is, how does it work if the app isn't suspended or if the OS kills it? And can we read the NFC tag in those states? And if it does, then is there any launch option key that I can use to identify? For example, like it does for the location service?
So on iOS 11, with the iPhone 7 and upwards, no. When the app gets suspended, you don't have access to that. The only way is actually running the app and yourself as a user initiating that action. However, on iOS 12, with iPhone 10s, 10s Max, and 10R, you can do the reading in the background. So as soon as you, should be able, for example, if I was able to code, you know, the proper URI here in the camera, I should be able to just get it close when the phone's sleeping, and you know, get my app waking up, and be able to connect to the Wi-Fi and start downloading the picture.
So is there any launch option key for that?
Sorry, any?
The launch option key, like finish launch option, you have those keys.
Yeah, so it's I think it's the did restore launching or something like that. I can't remember. It's the same one that you get when you are using NS user activity. I can't remember off the top of my head the precise signature. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me try and go through these, try and recap what you just did, or my interpretation of it. So you were able to connect to the Wi-Fi direct on the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to hard code the SSID and the password in the Apple app, and then when you use the NFC tag on the camera, then you told the app to connect to using Wi-Fi direct to the camera.
Yeah. So the camera advertises its SID and its password, its own Wi-Fi's details through this NFC tag. So by reading that NFC tag, I'm able to get that information and then use any hotspot configuration to connect to the Wi-Fi.
Right. So it used the phone's Wi-Fi. It used the phone's hotspot.
No, the camera's hotspot.
It used the camera's
yeah.
hotspot.
So and
then it connected using Wi-Fi direct. Then it became two machines on the LAN, on the Wi-Fi direct LAN, and then you read one file using Samba or a variant of Samba.
No, what I'm doing is I'm just for now using the Sony's app. So the Sony's app just carries on as you were, I'm simulating the act of going to settings, selecting the Wi-Fi, connecting to the Wi-Fi, and then manually opening the app.
Yeah.
But I'm just doing by, just getting close and reading the tag. All that happens in one action.
And the Sony app, because now you're on the LAN, was able to detect the camera and show the.
Yeah. I should be, my plans in the future is to be able to download the photos myself and do maybe something, but yeah, that's something.
Any more questions? I want to follow up with Tristan about Raspberry Pis becoming NFC tags themselves, because that sounds cool. And I have a lot of Raspberry
cool.
Pis at the moment. If there's no more questions, thank you, Pablo. That was excellent.
Thanks.